Hello, I'm Dave Dino, and this is Sponsor Spotlight. And today, the spotlight is on mortgages, but don't go away. I know you've heard a lot about mortgages, but we are going to talk with America's mortgage coach. And we are going to talk about everything from finance to equity to investors, the rising interest rates, some of the myths of mortgages. We're going to talk about women in transition, reverse mortgages, self-employed loans, senior mortgages, and a whole lot more. And to do that, we are going to be talking with America's mortgage coach, John W. Mallett. John, thank you for coming and spending some time with us.
You're welcome. It's great to be here, Dave.
Let's begin, I think, so people really get an idea of who you are and why you are called what you are. Why the title America's Mortgage Coach?
Well, when I've been in the industry for as many years as I have, and looking around and been through 3 recessions and all the turmoil that's gone on, especially with the last Great Recession, about all the people that lost their homes, I looked around and I saw a lot of financial people that were in the finance field that were supposedly experts on mortgage financing. But I never saw anybody that was in my business as a mortgage professional actually giving a clear answer, a compelling answer on what homeownership is all about.
You have done that very effectively in a book that we will probably mention along the way. And I don't want this to create the impression that we're going to be talking about first-time home buyers, because there's a tremendous amount of information in here for anyone who owns a home or wants to own a home. You are the author of Buy Your First Home Today, and we're going to make that available to people along the way as well.
Yeah, that's great.
I like that. You have a lot to say in there, and we'll refer to some of that in just a moment. But let's go back to your beginnings, because you did not have what in American terms would be called an idyllic childhood. How did you grow up?
Yeah, well, to give you a little bit of background, my parents were divorced when I was 8 years old. We lived in a beautiful beach home that was right, a couple blocks away from the beach. And my parents got divorced. My father walked out on us, basically. And so my mother had to do something. And she wanted to finish her college education. So she moved to San Luis Obispo to go to Cal Poly. And as she was getting into school, things were a little bit tight, things were a little tough. And then when I was 12 years old, my mother was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
And so that really made it a very difficult financial and emotional situation. And so I spent most of my teenage years growing up in the housing projects. We're on federal aid. And, it was interesting growing up in the projects, and really it was, had its challenges.
Let's talk about, for just a moment, something you do say in the book, and I want to start at this point, because I think it was an eye-opener for me when I read this. According to the FHA, 40% of those who are renting right now could actually own a home.
That's
They could
correct.
afford to own a home. They have the finances to own a home?
You bet. In most cases, 40%, this was a study by Fannie Mae several years ago, 40% of people who rent can qualify to buy, but they don't know it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big deal because there's a lot that they don't know. They think that they have to put down 20%. That's a myth. You don't have to put down 20%. Not necessarily. You can put down 3%.
And this whole issue of home ownership, you really like it over renting in most cases for people.
Most definitely. Yes.
Before we get into, and I want to talk about the finances for a moment, but maybe in a nutshell, why? Why is it better to go ahead and put your money into home ownership rather than renting?
Well, think about it this way, Dave. You're going to pay rent one way or another. You're always going to pay to be able, wherever you live, you'll pay rent.
Right.
It might be in the form of an actual rent, or it might be in the form of a mortgage payment. The important aspect is that when you pay rent, you're buying a home, but you're buying it for somebody else. So the key is why not buy it for yourself? And what most people don't realize is as time goes on, they need to be able to build up equity and get to a point to where someday their home is free and clear, because rents go up at about 2.5% to 3% per year. So that means that if a rent payment is $1,500 today, in 30 years the same payment's going to be $5,000. And people say, well, I have an IRA, I have 401k, I'll have savings, but that will exhaust all of those savings within a 10 to 12 year period.
Right. I think the statement that is most telling is the statement you said, that when you rent, you are buying that home for somebody else.
That's right. That's right.
When you could be buying that home for yourself. In other words, you're building the other person's equity if you're renting. If you're buying, you're building your equity.
Exactly. You're building your own net worth.
Wow.
And what's really important about it, when I began to really look at home ownership, is that there's a sense of empowerment that comes from that. It's statistically true that people who own homes, have a little bit higher quality of life. Mm-hmm. Marriages are a little bit more stable. There's all these benefits that go on with home ownership. And so many people don't realize that they can, if they work at it and find a way. They may not be able to today, but they may be in a year. I have a friend of mine, Noah, who's a good friend of mine. After he read my book, he said, 5 years ago, I had some money. And I thought about buying a home, but I thought I had to have 20% down. So I just went off and did something else. And, it didn't turn out very well. He said, if I would have known what's in your book, I would have bought a home, and my life would have been much different than it is today. See, people don't realize that home ownership extends way beyond just having a home to live in. You're not only building equity, but it's a home that you own, that you are beginning to feel that comfort knowing that you have a solid place. People who rent have a really hard time putting stakes down in the community. Mm-hmm. They have a really tough time saying, I really want to get to know my neighbors. Why? Mm-hmm. Because they know at some point they're probably going to move because either the landlord wants to sell the house or they have to move because rent may be getting too high. It may be a myriad of reasons why they have to move, but there is less of a propensity for them to be able to have that security. It's kind of weird to think about it, but when you buy a home, which is considered sometimes a risky thing, you actually have more security than if you were to rent.
We're talking with America's mortgage coach, John W. Mallett, and you can talk with him personally. I've got a phone number for you, and I also have a website that you can take a look at, and we have a very interesting offer for you. I think a very advantageous offer. First of all, the phone number, and I hope you'll write this down, and I hope you will follow up with a phone call, 818-874-9900. 818-874-9900. Or you can log on to John W. Mallett, that's Mallett, johnwmallett.com. Great website, full of information that you will find very, very helpful. That's johnwmallett.com, or call 818-874-9900. You have a generous offer for our listeners, don't you?
Yes. If you give me a call, I will provide for you the first chapter, the introduction, and the first chapter of the book free of charge, so you can kind of get to see it and see if it's something that you're interested in.
Okay.
It's a great book.
It is an outstanding book. I found it hard to put down. I put it by my bedside, and my wife would ask me, when are you turning out the light? And I'd say, one more chapter, just one more chapter. It's called Buy Your First Home Today. It's by John W. Mallett. Give him a call, and he'll let you sample it. He'll give you the first chapter. Now, it's not for first-time home buyers only, although it makes an amazing case for that. It offers a lot of wisdom for anyone who owns a home or wants to buy maybe a second home or, any home ownership issue. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But the phone number to call is 818-874-9900. John W. Mallett is America's mortgage coach, and let's talk about just the finances of owning a home. What's the advantage?
Well, the advantage is that you're building equity in your home. When people think about home ownership, they think about the idea of not having to pay rent. Mm-hmm. That's really kind of the level that it's on. But my belief is that level is much higher. And it depends on what you want to do with your home. We have people that come in and sign loan documents. I've been at several signings, and couple A comes in and they say, they look at the amount of interest that they're going to have to pay, And the husband usually just, gives a little kind of an expletive and says, oh, that's a lot of money. And they say, well, we don't want to pay rent anymore, and we're going to sign the loan documents and go. That's couple A. Mm-hmm. Then couple B comes in. Now, couple B is very interesting because they come in, they say the same thing. The husband says the same thing about all the interest that they're going to pay. And then they look at each other and they say, but we're not going to pay this much interest because we're going to pay our home off earlier. And because we want to leave a legacy for our children and we want to have a secure environment for our family. And what we want to do is we want to pay off our home. Now, it's really interesting, but my experience has been that when people make that statement, we want to pay off our home, they are basically saying we intend to be together for a long time. Mm-hmm. And when they voice that, there's a shift that says, our marriage is going to be a solid marriage. Our partnership is going to be something that we can count on. And we want to be together for a long time. And that's part of the glue that holds the relationship together. The worst part about my job is when people call and say, we're getting a divorce. Would you help us out?
Wow.
And it's much better to be able to go and have a reason and a purpose that holds the relationship together.
And of course, you build equity when you buy your home. You build equity. It's like an investment. It's a savings account.
Correct.
It just has so many positive ramifications in a life.
Right. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're talking with John W. Mallett. He is America's mortgage coach, and you can talk with him as well, and you can take a look at the first chapter of his book as well. The phone number to call is 818-874-9900. And again, I hope you'll write that down, and I hope you will follow up and give him a call with your question about home ownership, whether you are an existing homeowner and you'd like to make things better, or you want to get into your first home. And you know what? He has all kinds of ways to get you into your first home when you're young, when you're a young married couple. If you are a young single person, there are ways to get you into a home and get you started on building equity. Call him at 818-874-9900 or log on to John W. Mallett, Mallett, johnwmallett.com. Great website. You're going to love it. I'm Dave Dino, and this is Sponsor Spotlight. All right, let's talk about home ownership, building equity, and compare that to investing. Because some people will say, well, investing in a home is not nearly as profitable as investing in the market. What do you say to them?
Well, the thing that's interesting is that most people lose sight of the fact that your home is part of your financial plan because it's where you have shelter. It's one of the most fundamental investments that you can make. And I think that when people own a home, they don't really give themselves credit for the wonderful opportunity that they have allowed themselves. I mean, because it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. It's a big deal to have your own home.
It's putting down roots.
Yeah, it's putting down roots. Yeah. And so when people want to save more for investment purposes, it's fine that they do that because it develops over a period of time. But the return on investment on your home, on the home that you own, is much different. First of all, when you buy an investment, say you want to put in $10,000 into an investment or $100,000, let's say $100,000. Well, then you've got to actually write a check for $100,000. And so whatever that investment goes up to over the years, then it's always measured on that $100,000. But real estate is very different because when you're buying a home that you're going to occupy, chances are pretty good you can put down as little as 5%. Well, if it's 5% of $100,000, that means you're putting down $5,000.
So that's $100,000 out of pocket as opposed to $5,000 out of your pocket.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And so what will happen is as the value of the home increases over time, now I can't tell you if it's going to go up next year or when, but we know over the last 30 years that home prices rise around 3 to 4% a year. And as a result of that, as that home value increases, the value of it is based on the $5,000 investment, not the $100,000 investment. And so from a financial standpoint, there's great leverage in buying real estate. There's no question about it. But it goes back to the security. It goes back to the aspect of knowing that you have a place to live.
And you outline this very, very effectively, I must say, in the book, Buy Your First Home Today. And again, that's available. You can take a look at the first chapter and sample it for yourself. If you give John a call, the number to call is 818-874-9900. 818-874-9900. If you'd like to know more about John, just log on to John W. Mallett, M-A-L-L-E-T-T, johnwmallett.com. Again, the phone number, 818-874-9900. What about rising interest rates?
I think that rates generally will probably go up. They've gone up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always telling my clients 5 years ago that rates have to go up sometime, but they still haven't gone up that much. They're still great rates.
They are great.
It really is going to be a base of what the inflation is like. Mm-hmm. And, it's really hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that when we talk about mortgage rates, we're not talking about the short-term rates. When we talk about rates going up, that the Federal Reserve
mm-hmm.
causes that to happen,
mm-hmm.
It's basically for short-term funds. Mortgages are really based on what we call the 10-year note.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when rates go up, it actually helps mortgage rates stabilize or actually go down a little bit, because then it calms the market that inflation is not really going to be an issue.
Listen, I lived through the age when mortgage rates were 20%. And we're talking about in the 4s now?
Right. Yeah, they're still excellent rates.
Oh, happy day.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so affordable. What about, though, myths? You certainly come across a lot of myths concerning mortgage. Give me an example of a couple.
There's so much more. There's more misinformation than there is correct information about mortgages. The myth that you have to have 20% down to buy a home. The myth that seniors can't buy a home that they want to purchase so that they can have a place for the grandchildren to come to. Because they don't report a lot of income on their tax returns, and they think they can't qualify when really they can, if they just look at some of the programs that are available. The myth that you've got to have great credit. You don't have to have great credit. You can have lower credit score and still get into a property. The myth is that if you're a woman in transition, maybe after a divorce or something like that you can't buy a home of your own. That's totally inaccurate. You can in most cases.
We're talking with America's Mortgage Coach, and as you can tell, he really knows what he's talking about. You can talk with him yourself, not only to ask him your questions, but also to have him help you with a mortgage. Whether you want to buy your first home, buy a second home, or take a look at the finances of your current home, maybe refinance and get a better rate, lower your payment. There are some real advantages to doing that. And we're going to talk about the advantages of a reverse mortgage in just a moment. The number to call is 818-874-9900. 818-874-9900, or log on to his website, johnwmallett.com. Mallett is spelled M-A-L-L-E-T-T, so double L, double T. Easy to remember, johnwmallett.com. Women in transition, you mentioned that, and I just want to really stamp that very solidly.
Sure.
A lot of women will be coming out of a divorce or have lost a husband, and they will think, as you said, well, now financially, nobody's going to want to sell me a home. What about that?
Oh, that's just really misinformation, because many times they're well qualified to buy, but they don't know it. For example, they may have a 401k or an IRA account. Well, if you're at 59 years old, you can use that all as income.
Wow.
So if you had an IRA or an account, you divide that by 36 months, and they'll actually give that to you as income. It's incredible what you can do. Co-signers, there's just so many different options that are available. And a lot of times people are under the impression, especially women who are in transition, they don't really feel comfortable going to somebody and asking for help.
Sure.
And because of my background, I have a sensitivity towards some of the issues that women face. And one of those is being able to figure out how to have shelter and have a home for them and their children. And so it's critical that they get all the answers. And sometimes it's not right at this point. You know, they may have to wait 6 months to a year. But what we do is we really focus on getting them on the right track so that they have the correct information. When you don't know what's going on, it's very difficult. And sometimes things are so hurried and rushed, and you know, it's hard to be able to settle down and take a step back and say, this is how to do it. And I've had several women that I've worked with and that have just come out of divorces, or their husband recently passed away, and we've been able to put together and craft a strategy. And that's really the key to the whole thing, Dave, is being able to put together strategies for people, whether you're single or whether you're married or whether you're in a life partner relationship, whatever it might be. People come in, and even if you're a repeat buyer and you've bought several homes, the financing today is different than it was several years ago. Mm-hmm. And so it takes a strategy. Anybody can get approved for a loan. It's just the idea they don't have a strategy of how to go about getting it done so that you don't have all this stress and frustration and all these problems that come up at the end.
Well, he's called America's mortgage coach. As you can hear, he could be your mortgage coach, and that's really what's so nice about that. You can call 818-874-9900, 818-874-9900, or you can log on to his website, johnwmallett.com, Mallett with a double L, double T, M-A-L-L-E-T-T, johnwmallett.com. But call the phone number, 818-874-9900, and he'll make it possible for you to sample his book, Buy Your First Home Today. You'll be able to take a look at the first chapter and kind of see what he's all about. That number again, 818-874-9900. We fear things that we do not understand. There is a lot of misunderstanding about reverse mortgages. You like them. Why?
I like them because they solve a fundamental problem. The biggest problem is that individuals, seniors, and families and couples are running out of money because they're living longer. And more than that, they are not really optimizing their assets, meaning they're not taking full advantage of what they have. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they pay off their home and their mortgage is free and clear, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really recommend to pay off your home. And the time comes when they need some additional money, but they truly don't have enough income to qualify. This is one of those aspects where they really don't have enough money to do that. And so a reverse mortgage then will help them get equity from their property. And what's interesting is sometimes the kids look at a reverse mortgage and they say, no, this is horrible. We don't want that. And you know, either they're doing it because they're interested in the equity when their parents pass, when they die, which isn't always the case. It's more of really not understanding it because they don't want their parents to get into something that's going to be bad for them. And then the problem is, though, is that the parents are out of money. And so they begin to ask their children for their money, you know, for a stipend to help keep them going. But they realize that there's a $600,000 home that has no mortgage on it.
Right.
The parents would like to use the equity from that home, but, you know, they don't really have enough income to qualify for that. Now, the most important thing about retirement is that you've got to optimize your assets and you've got to eliminate your monthly expenses as much as possible. And the only way that you can do that is with a reverse mortgage. Now, what's interesting is that there's a lot of myths about reverse mortgages. It's called a HECM, Home Equity Conversion Mortgage. It's guaranteed by HUD, by the government. It's an FHA product. And what makes it very unique is that there's been a lot of changes to this loan in the last year that have made it an excellent product. And the key is the structure. As long as these loans are structured correctly, they're wonderful. You know, they can be very expensive, but if you structure it right, you know, there in some cases you can have a reverse mortgage that costs close to nothing. You know, it depends on how we structure it. I've had loans that I've put together where I've paid the closing costs for my clients, almost all of it sometimes.
Wow.
And so it just depends on how you put it together.
Well, we are at the end of our time together, and there's so much more that we could cover. It is possible to get self-employed loans. It is possible for a senior to get a mortgage as well. And there's even more. And you can find all of that out when you call America's Mortgage Coach, John W. Mallett. 818-874-9900. 818-874-9900. Call him. He'll make it possible for you to read the first chapter of his book. Take a look at that. You'll like it. Or log on to johnwmallett.com. I'm Dave Dino, and this has been Sponsor Spotlight.